Evolution is very problematic if you want to understand aging. I had a friend who had a prostate cancer, which is a disease that happens with age. And he said to me, how come evolution didn't fix it? Evolution didn't fix aging because evolution gets you to reproduction. When you have a baby, if you die the next year or you live to be 100, it really doesn't matter anymore. So we're very careful to distinct between the process of evolution and what it's done for aging. But certainly, the process of evolution had made us more successful. And this also happens to be important with aging too. But it's really not that evolution itself has made us successful. It's we got there in spite of evolution. I went to medical school and I learned that you can measure blood pressure or measure your glucose level or measure your cholesterol level. But for me, so what? If you put 100 people in front of me, I don't know who has high glucose or blood pressure or cholesterol, but I know who's young and who's old. And so it seemed to me always the most important question that I could ask. I walked on weekends with my grandfather when he was 68, which is also the year he died. And he was slow and obese and not much hair, but also white hair. And he told me about what he did when he was young. I said, how it's possible? I looked at my grandfather and I knew that this is where I'm going. We've been studying centenarians. Those are people who were exceptionally successful in getting old. And always the first question on our mind was, did they get sick when everybody gets sick, when they're in their 60s? And now they're sick for longer? Or did their lifespan and health span, did it go together? And in the population that we have, we show that it goes together in the sense not only did they live longer, but they got diseases 30 years later than people who live at the same time. And this wasn't the important part. The important part is that they were sick little time at the end of their lives. So they live healthy, and died. Why centenarians were successful? The short answer is that they have genomic factors. They have something in their genes that slows their aging process in their cells. And those are the processes that we're trying to find and finding and even translating into drugs. But one of the hypotheses that there are centenarians before 100 years, they did what we now know we should do. They exercised, they had good food, they slept, they were socially connected. But in fact, they were not. 50% were overweight or obese. 60% of the men and 30% of the women were smokers. There were very few vegetarian. Exercise, even moderate exercising, less than half of them, just doing housework or walking. Don't take it to say that you're stopping to exercise, no, but for them, it didn't matter, which really helped us in a way, because we knew it's not their interaction with the environment. There's something special that they have that slows their aging. You know, there's something interesting in nature where the small animals within each species, they live longer. You know that the small dogs live longer than the large dogs. The ponies live longer than the thoroughbreds. And even in laboratories, or if you have models that are born dwarf, they live healthier and longer. It happens that 60% of our centenarians have some problems with their genome, with their genes, that stops the action of growth hormones. The level of their growth hormone will suggest, if that's in the lower half, they would live twice as long as the people whose growth hormone is the highest. And even when we take drug based on that and stunt the action of growth hormone in animals, we would see that they are living much healthier and much longer. So this is an example of research that has immediately practical value because some of those drugs have been already in human use and are ready maybe to adapt. You have to understand why it works. When we are young, the growth hormones are important. In fact, they'll protect us from many diseases and mortality. But then we cross the age of 50 or 60, and we're starting to break down. It doesn't make sense for us to spend the energy on growth when we have other problems to deal with. And probably that's why it makes sense. We need less growth hormone when we're old, and it has really good effect on our health. I think at any age, what we have to deal with mainly is with exercising, with diet, with sleep, and with social connectivity. They're important at each age for our health and disease prevention. They all actually have effects on the biology. Exercise is probably the most important thing that we could do to our health that also prevent diseases. You can try Mediterranean diet. You can try low carbohydrate, or what I'm doing, which is based on my research, I'm doing intermittent fasting. I'm trying to fast at least 16 hours a day, and that have shown to improve health significantly. As far as sleep, you have to try and be 8 hours in dark room and sleep as much as you can there. As far as social connectivity, it's maybe less Zoom and more pubs. I was in the World Fair in Osaka, and before we started our symposium, I asked the people in the audience, how many of you want to live to be 100? Barely 20% rose their finger. After my talk, where I explained, we're talking about people who are healthy and having fun and are socially connected and all that, and I asked again, and there were few who didn't raise their hands. We are talking about healthy aging, okay, which means you can do whatever you want to do. The fulfillment of life and the lifespan and health span have to go together. You cannot have one without the other. If your health allows it, you're going to have a very fulfilled life. We are really leading a revolution that's based on science, that really suggests that people should spend time on their health and not on their diseases. The process of aging drives diseases, which means we have to interact with aging before we get diseases. We know how to interact, and we have great success in delaying aging in animals and in humans. And so we want you guys to join the revolution. Start treating your health, spend the time on your health, and you won't get sick, at least not for a long time.